p.m. We are ready to call the Judiciary Personnel and Licensing Committee to order. I know that we have Trustee Lynn, who is excused from committee this evening. Two items on the agenda tonight. So first up is to consider disclosure of all village board election contributions on the village website. So I will hand it over to Manager Ewald to discuss this.
Sure. Just a refresher on what's in the memorandum for the history. We had a motion from the board to consider this to be reviewed by JP&L. I had provided some links to the Wisconsin Election Commission campaign finance checklist, and then overview for local candidates, and then the filing calendar to give you a reference to the documents we're referring to. The Wisconsin Ethics Commission does not maintain records for local candidates. They request that people do them and obtain them through public record requests through the local clerk. So local municipalities accept those campaign finance forms for our elected positions, or the 7 positions on this board. Those forms are not submitted to the state. Over the last year, Clerk Harrell has received 3 open record requests for elected official campaign finance forms. We reached out to other local municipalities and have not learned of any of our size who post them online, but found 3 larger alternatives such as City of Madison, City of Milwaukee, and Milwaukee County. And at this time, we're ready to take a recommendation from the committee on how to proceed.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions from Trustee Ursink, or also we have Trustee Stokebrand here?
Yeah, I kind of struggle with this one. Well, on the surface, I don't have necessarily any issue with it. I think where my issue comes is that it can be a little divisive in our community. I mean, we struggle with that all the time with community members, residents, distrust in our elected officials. In my time here, I'm not quite sure I've seen any sort of reason why this needs to be a matter that like a more urgent matter. But I think the part that makes me nervous is where you can look this up easily and you're seeing your friends and your neighbors and who they're voting for and who they're putting money towards. And I think it can, maybe create tensions in our community that maybe, are easily avoidable. And I think that's the only thing that kind of gives me a little bit of pause about this, is that, I'd hate to go on my website and find, my neighbor that I like so much gave money to, one of my opponents, or it's just, I think it can create a little bit more divisiveness in our community with our residents and our elected officials. And I think the process right now of going through an open records request, we've only had 3 of them this year. I feel like that's an appropriate sort of direction to go for it. But at the same time, I'm not, that's just my personal feeling on this. I feel that, it's something that I'd love to know, like what staff time, the cost of time and energy to put this stuff on the website, what that looks like. But I just feel that it could be a little bit more divisive with our residents and elected officials. It's kind of my thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Trustee Stokebrand.
Thank you. Unfortunately, we're in a situation where the fourth estate is not doing its job. And that's the media, and we have no local news coverage. We're in a local news desert. And we're also in a situation where transparency can actually, the more you open things up, I think it actually makes things less divisive, because someone can say, well, I did a FOIA and here's what I found out. It's just all out there. And but it's only out there if you go and look. I mean, no one is going to throw it in front of someone and say, oh, you've got to read this. This is if you're interested and you want to know, could there be a potential conflict of interest? There's different things that could come into play, but one of them is campaign finance. And this is just the basic level of transparency that we would hope for in our village. I'm not looking here for, I spoke with Trustee Baldoff a little earlier, I'm not looking here for a database. I'm not looking for a huge time commitment. I think in the village, the number of pages is pretty minimal. I don't know if it ever exceeds 2 pages per candidate per filing. Clerk Harrell can shed some light on that. Of all the papers that come through this office and get scanned and posted, this to me is one of the best public services we could do, because it helps people make informed decisions. If you're not informed and educated, how can you make a decision? And I understand there are going to be people that I'm going to look at someone's contribution list and think, oh, I really thought I should have gotten that $20. But that's life as an elected official. I'm prepared to take that.
I fear that, there was a case that just kind of came up, and I remember Trustee Stokebrand talking about it a little bit with, Paul Hackbarth and some of our board members here. Paul Hackbarth had made contributions, and all of a sudden, Sunseekers, that whole project's happening, and those trustees are voting on the side of Mr. Hackbarth. And I fear that, that kind of conspiratorial thinking can really start to open up at that point, because was that somebody in the community that's been a long-term resident here in the community, that's been a business owner? Can he not give money without being looked at as potentially criminal or influential or trying to influence our elected officials? So I fear that if we have residents that are giving money and all of a sudden I've got to vote for a stop sign and that guy gave me $500 or $200 or $10, is that going to look like I was, that I was, disingenuous with that, with those finances? I think, it's still always going to be there, but I think when it's on the website, it's going to give people, some that are very conspiratorial, a lot more fuel to the fire and start to create these, like little vacuums of conversation on Facebook to say, hey, look, Paul Hackbarth gave Trustee McCaig money and now she's working with them. That just fuels the fire. And I fear that with that, all that just right on the website, I feel like that could just go in 100 different directions. But honestly, it's out there. It's public record. People, can have access to it. I'm not, I don't think there's ever been a case other than hearsay of any fraudulent financial, I know there's been a ton of open record. I think every cycle there's open record requests on finances of certain candidates, but I don't think anything's ever come of that. But in the root of things, I don't have anything to hide. I don't mind. I just fear that it creates more tension in our community. And that's something that I'm trying to, with all my power, get away, is creating more tension in our community with our residents and our elected officials. So, that's my thoughts.
Thank you for that. I certainly understand the concerns, but I, just think often of the phrase that sunlight is the best disinfectant. And I think that in some of these cases, just having this information available publicly does kind of turn the temperature down, because everyone's going to know it's out there. And I think the people who are conspiratorial are going to feel that way regardless. And, like you said, make open records requests. My only concern about this when it first came up was if this was going to be, a significant burden for staff, and it seems like it will not. So, to the extent that this is, not something that's taking up staff time, a lot of it, then I think that there is no downside here, is my position. So my preference would be, and I believe the motion and action here should be to make a recommendation or not for the full board to take it up. Okay. I feel comfortable making a motion to direct staff to advance to the full board a recommendation that staff publish campaign finance filings. Yes, I would say moving forward, I think that it would be, I think that it is something that maybe we look at in the future as the village takes the the steps to digitize more and more of our records. I know that's a process. I do think it would be burdensome to go back years and years and years, at least for now. My preference would be to start it now, and as more records are digitized, then we can kind of go down that path at that time if it's something that the board desires, would be my preference. So I guess I will attempt a motion here. I move that the village board consider a recommendation that would direct staff to publish campaign finance reports on the village website, starting with the year 2022? Or is it easier, or excuse me, with the year 2023, with the 2023 election?
Because trustee Lind is not here and I know he would want this to move forward, I'll second that.
Okay.
I'll just say that, you know, I'm going to also vote in favor of this. You know, I just have concerns. So leave it there, but I will vote in favor of moving this along to the full board with an asterisk.
All right. Well, then I guess all those in favor?
Aye.
So motion carries. And then our second item on the agenda tonight is also one for Manager Ewald to discuss a potential policy on groups and organizational transparency.
During COVID, we had a group called Mask Up Shorewood who wrote to the village board and requested they adopt a mask ordinance during the pandemic. Following that, a resident requested documentation of which individuals made up the entity Mask Up Shorewood and filed a public records request to review correspondence between this group and the village. The village also emailed the group to inquire who made up the organization without receiving a response, as no one from the group desired to represent the group at the time that those requests, open records requests were being placed here. So that brought this item to everyone's discussion point, which we said that we would follow up on later. And now is that time. Moving forward, the committee is requested tonight to discuss whether the village should require groups to identify their specific leadership with contact information or other information prior to the village board considering a request. After discussion on this topic and based upon the direction provided, we would either go forward and draft something later on in conjunction with our communications plans or not. It's really up to the recommendation of this group and then final decision from the board.
Thank you. Trustee Ursing, do you have any comments or questions here?
I was just going to say, do we want to read trustee Lynn's comments real quick?
Yeah.
Because I think he had some pretty good thoughts on this matter, but he's here. So
Here. Which one? Are we-
the second one, the transparency of the groups. Consider creation of a group organization transparency policy.
Would you like me to provide you with your comments?
Well, I remember what I said,
Okay.
but can I get a quick recap? of
We
where-
just opened this
Just-
item up. We passed the first item, that recommendation to the full board, and then we just opened this item up.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, concerns were putting an undue burden on outside groups
Becky.
and restricting people from, participating. Like, for example, a group presented to us, I've never heard of that group. But they came before us as their members were residents, we certainly want to hear their concerns. We would want to restrict that just because. That's ultimately where I'm at.
I can remember the case of Mask Up Shorewood. I think I knew each member really extremely well, and they were all actually extremely paranoid about a certain resident that was after their information that, they saw was that had smeared other people in the past online. And I think a lot of those folks they meant good. I don't think they understood how the process should work. I think it was just, they send out an email, they forgot to sign something. But then after there's this gentleman in the community that was trying to come after them, they were all actually really nervous about that, and it kind of pushed them away. So I would hate to have our residents not be able to accomplish things because they're afraid of what, the recourse of public opinion might happen, might happen in the community. So, just seeing that whole thing unfold, I can see where, I can see where people would want to be anonymous, but if they came and they talked to us here, then, we'd know who they are and we'd see them here at our meetings. So I don't think it would be as big of an issue than what happened during COVID when there was a lot of more emailing and virtual sort of discussion happening. But they were, the group was nervous about being attacked by this one citizen. And he had, there was a lot of, they could see online his personality on Twitter and online, and there was a lot of issues with him online, and they were afraid, of being found out by that guy.
Thank you for that. Trustee Stokebrand, did you have anything you wanted to comment here?
There was another situation where we were going over the police study, and there was a group called the Shorewood Police Accountability. I can't remember what the subject they used was. Anyway, it was something Shorewood Police Accountability Group, and they're still meeting. And I remember at one point talking to someone on the police commission, wondering who's in this group, how big is the group, just to get a feel for what the level of constituency support is for that point of view. And I think that's important as a decision maker. For me, I would like to know what is the level of support in the community for someone's position. So from that point of view, I would think that it would behoove us to request a list of members of your group. Because if you're coming to the village to ask for municipal, government action on something, I will want to know how big is your group, what is the depth and level, what the breadth and depth of your support. And I think that was the concern about this police working group. I mean, there were clearly some people who were very dedicated and informed, and they were helpful. But there were times when there was some frustration with, is it a handful of people? Are we making a decision based upon a handful of people? Where is the level of support? And that would have been helpful. I would at least think you'd want top leaders recognized. I mean, I don't know. Well, maybe we should get staff input from perspective of reaching out to that group, when something like this comes up.
That just made me think of one of the things that I had written as well, which is kind of how do we even define a group? A group like that. I mean, are they organized? Do they have to file a tax exempt status of some kind? Is there some sort of other filing requirements that they have, or is it just people who call themselves something loosely? So, I mean, I just don't think there's a good way to enforce it. And also to your point, seriously, I don't want to be in the process of doxing residents who want to remain anonymous. I don't think that's our job. So
I agree. I don't think that this is the right policy for us to move forward. I believe it could have a chilling effect on people's ability to participate. And, I think about the fact that, state law allows people to submit an open records request anonymously. A John Doe or a Jane Doe can request records and receive them. I think that the onus is on us to vet the information that we're being presented by a group. And if the information that it's not about vetting the stakeholders necessarily, but the information, and that's, I believe, our job. And, I think there are a lot of groups that are formal or informal that that do great work and, who aren't necessarily going to, be able to list all their members or want to list all their members. And then it's like, how far does this go? Is it like, do we have to disclose or seek to identify every member of, nonpartisan groups that we work with? If there's like, if League of Women Voters wants to do nonpartisan voter registration around the village, do we have to ask them for all their members? I certainly don't think that we need to. So I think this is, I understand that we want to have information, but I think this could, have the effect of putting people off of participating. And I think we should encourage more of our residents to be working together and talking together. And I don't see that this would encourage that. I think if anything, it would potentially be the opposite. And I would just recommend again that the vetting is the information that they're bringing to us as leaders. Is it good information that we would act on? So if anyone has a motion here, or do we need to make a motion okay, so does anyone want to make a motion? If not, I will. Okay, I move to recommend that the village board not instate a policy to identify organizations that interact with the village. Does that do it? Or I guess I just don't know exactly what the motion needs to be. I mean, can we just say to maintain our current policies?
Yeah, make a motion to not proceed
Sorry.
with the policy as
Creation of one.
or
Great.
creation of a policy as outlined in this memo.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor?
I,
Aye. All right, passes unanimously. And that is what we had on the agenda for JPNL tonight. So I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
so moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And we are adjourned at 6:31 PM.
At 6:35. All trustees are present except for trustee Arndorfer, who is excused. We have one item on the agenda this evening. We have an overview of the budget by Director Emanuelson. Thank you very much. I'll hand it over to you, and thank you everyone for your time, talent, and patience in advance.
All right, good evening. Tonight is our first look at the proposed 2023 budget. What I've done over the years that I've been with the village is create this executive overview to really try to focus in on the global drivers, the big movers that generate change from one year to the next on a budgetary level. So this presentation will summarize about 93% of the changes in the budget. Obviously, the overview includes 100% of the activity, but we try to bring forth the additional information and details in one place instead of just presenting to the village board a 150-page budget and trying to have you all sort through and figure out what's driving these numbers from one year to the next. This year, we did provide an additional week between this presentation and the beginning of the budget review session. We hope that this provides extra time for trustees to review the budget details, which should be in the folders on your desks. Also gives an opportunity for staff to be able to respond to general questions about the budgets or items as they're described in the budget. We really encourage you to reach out, give me a call, send me a text or email. And I will try to go through those general issues in advance so that going into the review sessions, we can all make the best use of our time and focus on budgetary decisions and additional discussion. So with that, we'll move to the 2023 proposed budget executive overview. We have a transmittal letter in there on page 2. Basically says what you may have heard from me before is that we build the budget based on current service levels, expectations, and other items approved by the village board. I know that we've done a lot of work this summer on a number of items that kind of sets the stage for us to craft our 2023 proposed budget. Page 3, which I believe is on the, I think everybody's working off paper, right? I don't have to look and see what's on the screen.
Good reminder, I was online. but-
Okay, however it works. So I'm on page 3. There's a couple big picture ways you can look at your revenues and expenditures. Page 3 is a summary of expenditures. It uses a lot of the same categories that you're going to see in the general fund overview. These numbers are village-wide, so they include the library, they include the senior resource center, the TIDS, pretty much everything that you have in the village budget. Again, just gives some good background information for what are the trends, what have we been doing, what's the budget to budget change. Some of these numbers, because they're village-wide, might look a little odd, especially once you get below the subtotal for operating. So I would really encourage you to focus on the top section of that table, which shows a overall 4.2% change in operating expenditures. That subtotal line for all divisions within the village.
I have a question. So just to recap, then I believe when I had spoken to you, we had talked about, you had talked about a 2.5% across the board increase, and then the 4.1%. I understand there are different things that make it move from the 2.5 to 7, but the fringe benefits, are those all, like, let's say the health provider is Humana, and that's something that for the pass through for that, or what I'm saying for an employee's health insurance example. Do you know your numbers yet?
Sure, we'll cover this in much more detail, item by item as
Okay.
we go through the presentation, but for health insurance, staff is currently using a 5% projection. We hope to know what our actual cost increase will be within the next several weeks, certainly before we get to the public hearing. Any other questions on this page? I've got a lot of detail that'll follow up. Hopefully that'll address some of your other questions. Again, I think everybody's got a keen interest in looking at our history. I think the village has been fairly consistent in having very modest tax levy increases over that 10-year period. The bar graph really shows the general fund, debt service, and then all other funds tax levy, which really is the senior resource center, and the library is the other funds. So there's three pieces to the tax levy, and all of them are, as you might expect, over the last 10 years, slowly creeping up. The line graph on the right side of that page shows you the specifics only to the tax levy, and what that was as a percentage compared to the previous year. Again, a very modest increase in my perspective over the last 10 years. Now this year's proposed budget shows 4.76%, which on a graph charting 0.9% and 1.42% looks like a pretty big spike. And it certainly is compared to those numbers. But it's probably not as dramatic as it would if we were charting larger numbers. It's just the way the chart presents. This year's budget is in compliance with the state levy limit requirements. So one of the key factors we look at when we're preparing the budget to make sure we are in compliance with the state levy limit requirements. Side note, the budget's also compliant with the state's expenditure restraint eligibility criteria for next. Page 5 are the budget metrics for tax levies. Again, it's trying to provide some information for context, looking how the tax levy changes over time, and then comparing last year's levy to this year's proposed budget tax levy and the changes from 2022 to 2023. You'll see that the general fund's about 4.2%. Debt service per what we believe is board strategy is 5%. General capital projects is 19.5%, but that really represents just the difference to try to get the funding in place to address this year's needs. We'll get into this a little bit later, but again, the staff has advocated that a target level of 625,000 is where we would expect to be. So this budget is actually slightly below that level. And then the library and senior resource center have their tax levy increases there. Again, I think everything's fairly in line with what we had expected earlier this year for those divisions. Any questions on that?
So just this, to be clear, bottom right-hand corner, page 10.
Page 5.
Well, page 10 in the paper version, but
Oh,
page 5 up there. That
Okay.
bottom right, that $13,
yes,
that's the number of actual dollars between what last year's tax bill would be and what this year's tax bill would be.
that's correct. Move on to page 6 then, which summarizes the impact of the proposed 4.76% tax levy increase on the what we call typical household, which is a house with a value of $340,000 of assessment. The village portion between this year and last year will increase $13 at this proposed funding level. The table gives you a variety of ranges for comparison, as we know that sometimes the proposed budget is not the end result. So this will help guide your perspective on what different levels of funding will mean to the village's portion of a individual homeowner's tax. I like my note on the bottom of this page. I just like it because it's a real easy rule of thumb for me. And that's a $5,000 tax levy increase or decrease equates to about $1 per household in property tax. So again, as we process through that budget, you may hear me refer to that upon occasion when we talk about potential impact property tax. Next page, please. So that's page 7 now. This is new from my presentation. We thought it was important to review with the board the impact of the TID 1 closure on the village's property tax bills for this year. Well, the total village assessed value is $1.8 billion. It's really the net assessed value that funds the tax levies of the various jurisdictions. The difference between that also contributes towards the tax incremental revenues that we find in our village TID budgets. So when you're looking at calculations for the impact of TID 1 closure, you're really looking at the net assessed value. So I've got a little breakout there. The 2022 net assessed value was 1.65 billion, and 2023 will be 1.72 billion. And then over to the right in magenta font. I got that's a $70 million or 4.2% increase due to TID closure. That's not new construction this year, but it's relieving the incremental value of the TID 1 district and releasing that towards the general tax levy, net assessed value, funding the various jurisdictions' individual tax levies. So what does that really mean? So if net assessed value is increased by 4.2% and the tax levies did not increase, same as last year, then the average tax bill will go down about 4.2%. Right? We've got a bigger pie. Everybody takes a smaller slice. And that equates to about $350 in 2020. And I want to take an opportunity to please emphasize that that's real money. Whatever the tax levies are, they're $350 less than they would have been if TID 1 hadn't closed. And that's this year, next year, the following year, in 5 years. So I think, well, we had a number of actual renovations, a lot of sprucing up of the properties in the TID district, a lot of effort into revitalizing the TID district. That is yielded with long-term appreciation property values as well. About $350 a household in tax relief, now that we've got to the point that we can close that district. So that's a good outcome. But taxes don't stay the same as they were last year. Not very often.
Because costs go up.
Because costs go up. They do. So I gave a couple more scenarios. So if the net assessed value increased by 4.2% and all of the tax levies increased by 2%, then the average tax bill will go down about 2.2%. That's 4.2 minus a 2% increase, 2.2. And that equates to about $175 per house. So that is typically the model we start out with when we're forecasting tax levies, about a 2% increase for all the jurisdictions. Some years that varies with MMSD, MATC, school district, village, the village tax levy. And then the third scenario there is if the net assessed value increases by 4% or 4.2%, the other tax levies increase by 2%, and the village tax levy increases by 5%, then the average tax bill will go down about 1.2% or about $100 in 2020. So a couple of different things for context. Again, I think that tax relief is beneficial to the community. No matter where the tax levies for all the jurisdictions come out, we still get that tax relief. But there's a couple of different ways that will show up on the individual's homeowner's tax bill. And then obviously a higher increase in a school district or Milwaukee County could significantly impact this conceptual synopsis. So we'll see. We don't know what those numbers are. We won't know until we know in late November. But we're setting us up for a pretty good tax year, I think, overall.
So how does the $13 increase on a $340,000 house? These numbers? It would be that much higher. It would be without that tax relief for closing TID 1. What would it?
I
Instead
did
of
not.
13? I'm just curious.
Yeah, I did not calculate that. We always look 1 year to the next. And on the previous page, we've kind of got that table. Again, if we're talking $350,000 at the village level, or oops, that's general fund. I think we're $560 overall. And that's every $5,000 is $1, so that'd be about $100.
Instead of a $13 increase, it'd be 100.
I believe that's the way to. Let me review that,
I didn't hear.
please.
Can you repeat that? I lost.
I'm just wondering, to kind of understand the effect of the TID closure on, for example, if this budget is approved as it is, the tax increase would be $13 on a $340,000 home. I'm just wondering, I can't do the math as quickly as Mark can. Without the TID closure, what would that $13 increase be?
Well, if the TID didn't close, and on the previous page, that highlighted change amount, tax levy increase in dollars is 566,000. So if we're at the old tax assessed value with TID one still active, number one, TID one would get $2 million a year in increment, right? They don't have to do that now, but if we use a simplified metric that every $5,000 is equal to $1, the homeowner in property taxes, that'd be $113.
Thank you.
Any other questions about TID closure and helpful?
I'm just feeling thankful because River Hills is going to referendum for an operating referendum. So I'm glad that we're not.
Not for 2023 anyway. I don't know. Do you know of anybody who's done for 23, or are we just talking for coming years?
I think he's referring to the school district.
Yeah, I'm just talking about village municipalities.
Okay. Hey, Jay. So now we focus in really on just the general fund of the village's main operating costs. Again, this is going to be the focus of the bulk of the remainder of the presentation. Just really to help summarize the primary fiscal changes that have impacted the development of the 2023 proposed budget. Again, I believe we call out about 93% of those changes, $327,000 out of about $350,000 in increases to the 2023 proposed budget. And obviously the materials you have on your desk now are the supporting material with all the departmental line item budgets and their supplemental detail sheets. Again, we really believe that is an unparalleled level of information to share with the board and the public. The last paragraph on this sheet is just a reminder that in the budget books that you have on your desk in the binders, if you see magenta, something colored magenta, we don't say red because red has a bad connotation in finance. So it's magenta.
Gosh, it looks like red.
Red and blue are so polarizing.
Oh, God, I didn't even think of that. So if it's in magenta in your budget detail sheets, your departmental budgets, it's been referenced in this summary already. So I would encourage you, if you have questions about items, you can refer back to this. You can still email me, give me a call, whatever, but I just wanted to give a kind of a little color coding to emphasize those items that are encapsulated in this executive overview. And if you see things that are highlighted in blue font in the department details, that means they have additional supporting information following the department budget in the budget detail sheet. So quick handy tips to working through the budget. And if you have questions, those should be the first go-to places I would look. And then of course, really, I'd love to hear from everybody and be able to answer any questions you might have that just provide clarity so you can have a really good discussion in a couple of weeks when we do the departmental review. Page 9. Again, it's a multi-year summary, shows the village's revenues and expenditures. These are all major categories. These are defined actually under state statute, or at least most of them are. gives you a sense for how each one of those subsections is moving. You know that I will go to percentages, but keep in mind a 3.1% on a $1.6 million line item is different than a 6% on a $373,000 line item. Which is why I've got the following page, which are just a little more visual charts that show the composition of the revenues and the expenditures in those categories graphically, so you can see the magnitude that each one of those areas impacts the village and the budgeting process. Taxes are at 70%, everything else 30%, right? We do get about 13% intergovernmental revenues. All of our licenses and permits are about 5%. And keep in mind, this is the general fund. It does include parking permits for on-street parking. We've got some fines, charges for services, some other revenues and the like. And then the expenditures to the right, as you might expect, three big slices there for police, other public safety, which is our fire department, communications, health department is in there at 1%. All right, sorry, health department's in other public safety. The health component in the senior resource center is 1%. No, the health department is 1%. Other public safety is North Shore Fire Department. I'm thinking all funds.
And dispatcher.
Yes. And then public works, 23%, general government, 13%. So I like this graph. Again, it gives some context to when you try to move the needle, what the biggest pieces of the pie are and what you would have to do to make a meaningful impact in the budget. And that usually takes a lot of process to try to adapt policy changes to impact those areas. Page 11 is where I start on my tables and charts. This is the revenue section of the general fund. Again, it's a big part of that's a repeat from the previous table, but I do have notes below that now. A little more detail, again, intergovernmental, state transportation aids, recycling, state shared revenues, expenditure restraint program aids. And then what we're seeing this year that drives a change in the intergovernmental revenue. So slight decrease in expenditure restraint due to last year's reassessment, but a modest increase in transportation aids due to a change in state policy and our expected funding formula. Licenses, yes.
Sorry, which one is that, Mark? Is that the other financing sources down 64%?
Yes.
Is that state transportation?
No, we're on intergovernmental revenue is where the state transportation aids are. Other financing sources, just to touch base, why they're down is because it's a slightly less amount that's needed to stabilize debt service, and we do not have 300,000 programmed for funding capital projects in 2020. So those are two pretty straightforward line items that make that. Again, a review of licenses and permits. The highlight of that being that on-street parking permit sales are budgeted for about a 27% increase over 2022. That's $50,000. Fines, the net parking fines are projected to increase by $40,000 based on current trends. Now that we're in our second year of the expansion of on-street parking, getting better data on that and what to expect. Charges for services, and these are going to be summarized in a table at the end of this if you haven't read ahead. But charges for services, the critical factors in there is that we're no longer expecting a $23,000 or $25,000 revenue from the village of Brown Deer for the cost sharing agreement for the court clerk. That initiative ended. Slight increase in charges to Whitefish Bay and the Shorewood School District for refuse collections, and that's a pass along. So as our collections cost increase, we actually get increased reimbursements from the school district and from the village of Whitefish Bay. And crossing guards are expected to increase about 7,500. That would be the school district's share of the increased contract that was approved by the village board a few weeks back. And other financing sources, talked about that just a few moments ago. The next, on page 12, then we get into expenditures. Now, these are the big categories. And I've got on page 12. I've got detail sheets following on each one of these large categories, but I find it helpful to take a look at them again in aggregate to see their impact on the overall budget. So we've got the percent change from 2022 to 23, and then we've got the percent of general fund expenditures on the far right column of that table. And then pie charts because we can. So you can see how much of the village's budget is really driven by staff wages and benefits. We've got payments to other governments for contracted services like fire department, dispatch, health services, other contractual payments, professional fees, the village's insurances, the village's utility cost, electric, gas, those types of things, and supplies and others. So a lot of big chunks there in a small group of categories. Let's move on to page 13 and look at some of the details for salaries and wages. We break salaries and wages into three groups: police, public works, and all other. These are our expected impacts that are included in the 2023 proposed budget. The budget includes a base cost of living increase of 2.5% for most non-union staff. The allowable CPI index adjustment for the 2023 expenditure restraint program is 7.7%. And I would just add that, this is a backwards looking trend. So that 7.7% has already occurred. We're not projecting forward, we're looking backward. The police department is largely governed by a union contract. We're estimating a 2.5% contract increase in 2023 for budgetary purposes. Happens to be the same number that we're using for non-union staff. Again, one of the things that the staff has done in the past 5 or 6 years is budgeted for 1/2 of a FTE less than full staff in the police department. What this does is that when there's transition, then those budget and tax dollars are not locked up, and then they won't fall to the fund balance and surplus funds. So we allow a certain amount of expectation that we're going to have vacancies, and we budget for those vacancies. Sometimes they occur, sometimes they don't. More often than not, in recent history, they have occurred. We do the same thing in the Public Works Department. We budget for 6 months of elective vacancies within the department during staff transitions, be they retirements, career changes, other things like that. You can see that not all the percent change from year to year in each of those categories is exactly 2.5%. So there's some context of how things shuffle around between budget year to budget year between certain staffing levels, where they're working. Obviously, people will choose their health insurance coverage. But that'll be in the next section. But as older, I shouldn't say older, as more senior staff leave the agency, newer staff come in, and they'll come in at a lower rate. So some of that will impact the calculations as well. In the appendix to the budget that's in the folder that was on your desk today, you will see a very detailed listing of all the staff positions and expected wages for the 2023 budget. We provide that for those who are looking for that level of detail.
And Mark, wasn't it last year that we increased wages in Department of Public Works to be more competitive in the market? And that's that 3.5 increase.
I'm thinking that was 21,
Oh, it's 21.
which was, well, 21 was
Yeah.
last year now,
Oh,
but
right,
budget
right.
years, it's two years ago.
2 year. Thank you.
And again, we had an increase in the court clerk's position there for retention increase, not in this particular section, but in the senior resource center support staff, you'll see that later on in the book. Page 14 then is our summary of positions. Again, over time, we've been able to maintain our workload with slightly less staff than we had 10 years ago. If you look back 20 years ago, you'd see significantly more staff. There's some major revisions done in our staffing patterns at that time. But I think a 10-year perspective is reasonable because things are always changing. Service level expectations are changing. And so we've got this just for context. Page 15 talks about fringe benefits. Again, and fringe benefits comes into there were 6, 7, 8 different categories we've got there. Health insurance, of course, being the largest one. And even though we are budgeting for a 5% increase in our health insurance costs, our projections for the 2023 budget are really only showing a 1.6% increase in health insurance costs. And again, that's because what we budgeted in 2022 and then the actual staff elections and what, there's been some staff turnover, changes in that. Doesn't take a whole lot to move the needle when you're talking about a $20,000 a year benefit for most full-time staff with family coverage, 25,000 actually. WRS had a rate increase that is governed by the state for how much the village has to contribute towards the employee pension program. So that in conjunction with the increased wages in the budget made a pretty significant move this year. And that changes year to year. We don't really know how those will be impacted. We just kind of have to take our medicine when it comes. I mean, there's been years where those increases have been extremely low as well. So I can tell you overall that the pension program is extremely strong. But one of the reasons it's strong is because they always make sure they get the right amount going in as more information is available to them. Retiree health costs also increased a little bit in 2023, and I will fall on the sword for that. I drew numbers from the wrong column in a table last year, so 2022 numbers were decreased because I pulled from the wrong column. So they really didn't increase that much, but the budget numbers were understated last. Good.
And is that would be for people seeking a bridge between retirement?
Yes, that's for continuing benefits for retirees between the time they leave the village and they're qualified for those benefits and the time they turn age 65 when they're eligible for Medicaid. Page 16 is our other government payments, as I was trying to express earlier. Again, really three big categories, and the North Shore Fire Department being the biggest of them. These are intergovernmental agreements. They're governed by separate boards that we participate in. And these are the increases we're expecting in 2023. I've not got the final health department numbers. I think the communications numbers came in very close to projected when I prepared this document. This is a couple of weeks old. So I wouldn't expect any changes there. North Shore Fire Department budget is actual. So $100,000 increase just in those sectors there. Page 17, then we talked contractual payments. And again, there's just so many different ways to look at the budget. You'll notice in the budget detail, for those who look very closely, you'll see a little column on the right side of all the departmental line items that tell what fund, if they're office supplies, contractual payments, fringe benefits. But this, again, we're trying to get a good executive overview of the budget, what's driving the budget to the amount that we're seeing in the proposed budget. Several major contractual services the villages is engaged in. Most of these are multi-year contracts, with the exception of the electrician services. As you may recall, we were not successful in hiring a staff electrician over the past couple of years, but we are continuing to experience high demand for those services, particularly with our street lighting system. And this year's budget reflects that.
A quick question on parking and citation,
Yes,
the decrease of 7,
yes.
that
No, the contract for those software fees in the first year included some one-time costs. Now that we're moving into future years, those costs go away and we're getting to a base contract rates.
okay, so that's
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. Again, there's some additional detail underneath there. I think those categories are fairly specific. Page 18 then, professional fees, again, fairly specific. We are seeing a trend that we're using less legal fees due to, let's just call it lower demand. And that's factored into this year's budget. We also recall that the village board approved a significant increase in technical support through Bayside IT services a couple of meetings ago. That's a $58,000 increase in 2023 compared to 2022. The insurance portion on page 18, pretty straightforward. Liability insurance, workers' comp insurance. Our liability insurance costs increased about 10%. Workers' comp had rate decreases, but a modifier factor increase that's specific to the village of Shorewood. Together, we're looking about 8.4% increase. So it's about 15,000 and 10,000 a year for each one of those. Page 19, then start getting down to a little bit of the nitty gritty. But again, you'll see these line items in multiple areas in the budget. So we're trying to aggregate them up so you can see what the underlying trends are. We're expecting a significant increase in gas on a percentage basis, slight increase in electricity on a percentage basis. Water and sewer, we actually passed our own increase for sewer services earlier this year. Those will be reflected as the village is not exempt from paying those fees. And then phone calls are expected to go up slightly in 2020 as well. Page 20, and here's the last 7% of the budget, give or take, 6 categories. The activity going on there, particularly in item number 3, supplies for vehicles. You know, we're looking at a $155,000 of that line item is for fuel. That's an increase of $26,000 from the 2022 budget for that line item alone. And then we also have a $15,000 increase for vehicle parts and repairs. And that really relates to the amount of work that we are expected to outsource because either our staff can't complete the work or facilities can't accommodate the type of work that has to be done. And also in some cases, the work is specialized and needs to be sent to like a manufacturer's type operation to get the work done properly. So previously talked about the other financing uses going down. Love to see those numbers if it were, if they didn't change the revenue numbers as well, would be even better, but they're matching numbers, so they offset each other. There's no real savings there. And an increase in interdepartmental expenses is actually good for the general fund. And those are just, again, reflect some of the increased costs that are being passed out to the water and sewer utilities as they need to take their share of some of our administrative costs and facilities costs, consistent with the accounting rules that we use to keep track of those business units. Page 21 then, again, as promised, a table. So you don't have to look through all the narrative to find those items. These are the significant moves in the revenue section. I've got the expenditure restraint and general transportation aids in magenta. In this context, it means that we're just waiting for the final state estimates. Those will come in at the end of the month. When we get those, we'll let you know. Revenues that are non-tax revenues actually are expected to go up 150,000 or very close to 150,000 a year. All told, that's not bad. They're turning in a positive direction. Looking to page 22, we've got a summary of expenses that are changing. I call these baseline changes that apply to all general fund departments. So you'll see the impacts of these spread out in every division in those first 6 or 8 line items: staff wages, staff benefits, things like that. Unfortunately, those increased by $175,000 in the 2023 budget compared to 2022. Again, these were mentioned previously in the narrative, and they're going to be highlighted in magenta in the department budgets. But I thought it was a little more effective to put together some summary tables for you to review as well. On page 23 are all the other expenditure increases that are non-staff related. A variety, some things are going up, some things are going down. At the end of the day, though, we see $300,000 increase in expenditures. And IT services is 58,000 of that. North Shore Fire Department's 85,000 of that. Contracted electrical is 55,000 of that. Recycling disposal fees. So there's some big pieces in there. But we've tried to present you anything that's more than about $10,000. In retiree health, 6,500 is about the lowest we went. So there's obviously hundreds of changes in the whole budget. but they're going to be, again, what we call trend increases. They're just going to be what happened in 21, what are we expecting in 2022, what do we see in 2023, and there'll be a lot more, $400, $500 at a time, maybe $1,000 in a category.
I have a question.
Yeah.
What is driving that big increase in credit card fees for the police? Is that just like a one-time thing to set up a new system, or is that like
No, that's a
gonna
great
every
question.
year be that much?
Last year's budget was supposed to be 10,000. That's not what I entered into the budget. I
Okay.
entered 1,000. But we also find that post-COVID and throughout the COVID transition, people are just really taking advantage of all the online services the village is offering, that people don't have to come down, and the convenience of being able to do things online. In this case, in the police department, we've got online payments for parking tickets as well as online payments for on-street parking. Trustee Stokebrand and I were reviewing this the other day, and about 3% of revenues, transaction fees for credit cards. So although it's a $19,000 increase, a good chunk of that was because I had a typo in last year's budget, didn't represent the true expected cost, which is really just an estimate because of we're just really getting going on the new system. But participation in our online services is very high.
So we don't pass the transaction fee on to the customer?
No, we don't.
Okay.
We don't. If you've been here long enough, you might recall a
I
point in time where
do
we
recall
increased
that.
the parking ticket fee from $20 to $25 and to cover both the software costs and some of these costs. So that's kind of baked in there. The on-street permit sales, the board set those rates. And I think we want to encourage the use of online activities. So if those costs get too prohibitive, you may consider changing those fees. But I would generally think that that's a good thing to have a lot of online participation. We can.
I guess in that discussion with Mark, one of my points was most people, I will say younger than me, see the fees as part of doing business. And at a certain point, there may be a feeling that you're discouraging people from paying by passing along that fee. On the other hand, it's become such a part of life for so many financial transactions. That's another side of the coin. And yet another point of view would be that there's really transparency if you're charging that fee instead of baking it into the cost of the fine. To Mark's point, that we'd raised the fines by $5 to factor in that cost. So if you've got the line item on your fine, $3 process. On the other hand, if they don't pay online and they come in and they use village staff, that's another cost. So there's a lot of things going into this. And I know the number seems small now.
Well, again, there's another $20,000 of credit card fees in the water utility and another $20,000 in the sewer utility. So they do add up, but that's on, again, it's about 3% of revenue. So definitely something that could have an impact looking forward.
And what's the decrease in marketing and communications?
But I should have numbered these. The
It's
second
number
one,
two.
second one on page 23. Decrease in marketing and communications. You may recall that last year staff proposed an initiative to come up with a supplemental quarterly newsletter to kind of fill in the gaps between the release of the Shorewood today, so that we'd have more frequent global communication. Well, that initiative never really got off the ground, and so was not carried forward in this year's proposed budget. That was about $20,000. But in its place, the village board also recently approved participation in the university program, which is about $8,300 a year. So the net impact between those two things accounts for the roughly $12,000 drop in that line.
And then we had at one point talked about message boards. And those were not ever initiated either. I don't know.
Those kiosks should
Around
be
town, we were gonna have a
coming
message.
up this fall yet, we hope,
Mhm.
right? Or no,
So-
they were deferred to 2023's budget. They'll be in this 2023 capital.
Just one follow-up on the university, and with regards to that communication piece. We did ask for them to review, do a comprehensive review of our communications. So within that scope, we have that noted as one of the things that we want them to evaluate based upon how it would work within our community. With regards to the kiosks, Assistant Village Manager Anderson did pick that project up and start looking at it. What was originally scoped out by the prior assistant manager was a good attempt that wasn't the full breadth and the scope of what we actually need to deploy those screens in different areas because of how it was based off of the one that was in the library that actually runs off its own independent computer server. So he's going to need to go back to the drawing board to see how we can run it effectively in other locations that aren't directly hardwired to our IT.
I wonder if we should put that on hold until we get our university report back.
Oh, well, that
I
could be.
mean,
I would
No,
agree.
that's the same dynamic. I think he was really looking forward to deploy. And then once we actually started getting detail into what it meant and laying out the infrastructure, that's when we started to run into some issues, but we'd be happy to do that as well. And maybe they'd have a different solution,
Mhm.
right? Than the
I
one
would
that we've
imagine
initially
things have changed in 3 years.
Right. But good suggestion, trustee Stokebrand.
mean, I wouldn't, maybe it's something community and business relations should discuss. I mean, if it was approved, then it probably needs to have official action taken. Take it back. Dial it back. Wouldn't we need to take official action at some level?
We just wouldn't complete the expenditure in 2022.
Need
It
board
is
action.
included in the 2023 budget,
Mhm.
capital budget.
The message boards.
Yes.
Right. So you could remove them if that's something that would be the desire of the board. And then we could evaluate in 2023. And then based upon that, come back. I'm presuming we're going to learn more through the university comprehensive review than we've contemplated before. So that may be prudent, given what we know now.
But to your point, trustee Stokebrand, we'll look at procedurally how to make sure that that's a clear connecting the dots
Mhm.
from this discussion to that action.
And that could be done throughout the scope of our review of the budget at our
Mhm.
next session on October 3rd.
Mhm. All right, we
All
are
right.
reaching.
I've got 3 more pages.
right.
Appreciate everybody's patience as I kind of grind through all these numbers and things. I love it, but I'm sure it's probably not quite as exciting to you folks. So page 24, we do want to touch on a high level again, the capital budgeting process. There are bonded revenues. Those really have a long-term fiscal impact that's seen in the debt service fund because it's not funded by annual tax levy, funded by the issuance of debt. And then we have projects that are not eligible for debt. Those are funded by annual revenues. And those are the ones listed below in the narrative that are typically funded in the annual request for capital funding. Page 24, again, a little table, kind of comparatively showing what we've done, page 24 or 25, I misspoke. We got a table there kind of showing what our baseline number is for police vehicles, DPW vehicles and equipment, because we can calculate that a little more readily. Looking at 2022 to 2023 on the right,
For
Uh,
those-
Sorry,
excuse me.
sorry to interrupt you, but our packets are set up differently here. So it goes straight to general fund and the.
That's
first-
not the same presentation.
Okay, this is not,
No.
what you're looking at is online. Okay.
Right.
This
I
is
was
in the
just going to say,
packet.
for those of you that are on paper, you
Yep.
might
Or,
want to
or
shift,
it's on the board.
I'll just look on the board.
Okay.
if you want to
Um,
zoom in a little bit.
Do you have a
Yeah.
minute to just explain the more than doubling of the park improvements and major maintenance?
We will do that during the budget review session, yes.
Okay.
So there's just some general categories that staff will reference for things that require capital funding. There's no actually individual baseline for all of those other items. But in aggregate, we're using a $625,000 total. In the 2022 budget, 505,000 was funded and approved by the board, which is about 120,000 under that benchmark 625. 2023 proposed budget is 603,500, about 21,500 below that benchmark. Again, staff expects that this is where a lot of discussion will occur in a couple of weeks as these items are not required for operational impact on a year-to-year basis, but more of a long-term basis. So there's always discussion on what should be funded in each year. We prefer smooth and steady, but we understand too, we're coming in with a 4.76 number for a tax levy increase in the proposed budget that may merit an additional look at some of those costs for the board to contemplate. And then the last page just talks about the utilities. The parking utilities budget will reflect current trends and expectations. The water utility budget will reflect an anticipated 20% rate increase to be approved by the Public Service Commission. This was approved by the board to seek that rate increase earlier this year. And then the sewer budget is again, current trends. There are no sewer utility rate increases included in the 2023 proposed budget. And that's time. Thank you so much.
One question for direction for the board. Say somebody wants to make an increase, a proposal to increase or decrease a certain line item. Please direct us on how we would proceed.
Yes, during the budget workshop, we'll review those items that come up for discussion. And then we'll typically put them on a list, and then assuming that there's more than one or two people interested in that item. And then at the wrap-up session, we'll have those items collectively assorted, show you the impact of them so you can kind of weigh your decisions based on what the collective impact of those various items might be.
Great. And I will say, based on experience, that it's really helpful if any trustees that are planning to propose a change, either increasing or decreasing, to send that ahead of time to Mark so that he can share it ahead of time of the budget workshop, because it's really hard to kind of think about things on the fly. And then we would still put it on a list and then
We
work
still
it
go through it for sure. It's just a
But
matter of
it's easier
organization and
to-
efficiency.
Exactly. All right. Thank you very much. We are at time, so we're going to adjourn the committee of the whole at, what time is it? 7:35. Motion to adjourn? I'm kind of going down.
So moved.
Okay.
Second.
We're adjourned at 7:35. Okay, I'd like to call the Village Board of Shorewood to order at 7:38. All trustees are present except for trustee Arndorfer, who is excused this evening. Has this meeting been publicly noticed?
The meeting has been properly noticed and posted according to law.
That's great. Thank you very much. First, I want to say thank you in advance for your time, talent, and patience this evening as we conduct the business of the village. I would also like to take a moment to acknowledge a special guest that we have this evening, our newly elected Assembly District 10 representative, Darren Madison. And thank you. And if you would like to address the board in any capacity, I would allow you to do that at the mic, but there's no pressure. Okay. This one, and you have to,
We gotta.
yeah.
I love it. I've been here before.
and you have to talk like right into it. It doesn't work.
I
very well.
got you. I
Yes,
got you.
excellent.
I can sing a sweet song. Hi, I'm Darren Madison. It's a pleasure to meet most of you. Some of you I've had the luxury of meeting and knocking on your doors. Some of you I haven't. But nonetheless, I'd love to meet as many of you as possible and, you know, again, set up a meeting, especially before January comes and the work really begins at the state, knowing that the needs of the 10th district are diverse, right? Knowing that we have 3 municipalities as well as a very diverse, staunch, multiracial population, as well as multi-class. But, you know, again, thank you for your work. And it's a pleasure again to meet you all and looking forward to seeing what we can do together.
Excellent. Thank you very much. All right, and welcome to all our other guests this evening. Moving on to item 4, special order of business. We have several this evening. 4A, consider new special event permit and temporary cabaret license for the School of Rock, 4050 Oakland Avenue, Rocktoberfest, October 1, 2020. There is a memo in our materials that's accompanied by an application. Their staff has no reservations and all conditions that came out of committee have been met. Is there anything, Trustee Moore-Baldoff, that you would like to add coming out of committee?
No, I think that we were pretty much all in agreement that we want to have more wonderful events in Shorewood and more opportunities for people to be out enjoying our community. And I think that we're excited about this.
Great. Manager Ewald?
And the applicants, I believe, are in the audience this evening. If you could raise your hand. Thank you. They placed a call later this evening and they were interested in also including a bounce house. Is that correct? Within the scope of the plan for the event, was not identified on the site layout, but wanted to bring that to the attention of the group because I believe it's their intention to request that be included within the approval this evening. Okay.
I don't have any concerns about adding a bounce house to the event.
There's nobody that needs to weigh in, the DPW or nobody, just anybody else typically weigh in on that aspect of it. I saw tents got special attention in a different.
Yeah, I don't know if there's any specific fire code.
No,
Uh,
there's no specific requirements for the bounce house, other than that they are responsible for the setup and monitoring of it.
mhm,
Liability.
Correct.
mhm. Yeah, and already they have a certificate here. Director Griebenthag, is there anything you'd like to add? All right. Trustee Kudo, is there anything?
Where would you put the bounce? I'm looking at the diagram.
Hi, I'm Morgan Evans. I'm the general manager of School of Rock Shorewood. I think we were looking at the bouncy house perhaps being more toward Brat House. So further toward Oakland. We've got kind of the food trucks that are near Kenmore, along with the restrooms. And so probably a little bit past like Walgreens parking lot would be where we would be looking at for that.
Thank you.
Trustee Ursink?
Yeah, I would probably just caution putting that closer to Capitol. I think my only reservation is closing off Capitol here. That's going to get a lot of attention with cars not being able to get to, you know, Walgreens and Pick and Save. So there's going to be a lot of disgruntled people, and there might be people that, you know, that want to turn, that accidentally turn. And if there's a bouncy house right at that turn, I would say move the kids as far away from Capitol is possible. And I think that, that'd be a good idea.
Okay.
Yeah, please keep in mind that there are going to be barricades on Capitol to prevent accidental touring, and there's also going to be traffic controls.
Traffic controls.
People, police.
Please.
Yeah, and barricades and parked vehicles.
Parked vehicle. Okay, got it all.
But
Several
point
layers.
taken.
So got you.
There's a lot of room.
So Capitol stays open.
Yes,
Just no
except for the
left turn
left turn lane.
north.
Correct.
Oakland.
Mhm.
So just so we're clear, so there's not going to be police present at the intersection closure?
Oh, they're gonna be barricade-
There will
yeah.
be assistance from Public Works and police when those identified locations are closed.
Mhm.
And then behind those class 3 barricades would then be the responsibility of the applicant to place large vehicles as a secondary
Mhm.
tier.
Yep, we are very excited though. This will be a lot of fun.
Okay,
Good
so
luck.
basically I'm hearing from the group that there is no concern about the bounce house.
That's
Do we have
correct.
to include that in the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay, so if there is a motion at this time? Yes, trustee Stokbrand?
I move to recommend approval of the special event and cabaret permits for School of Rock on October 1, 2022 for Oktoberfest with A, additional 3 portable toilets with hand washing station. B, notification be provided to all neighbors. C, parking of vehicles behind barricades on Oakland Avenue. D, costs associated with DPW assistance for roadway closure and police presence costs be paid for by the applicant. And E, approval of the bouncy house.
Is that the technical term? for
Bounce
that?
house? Yeah,
Is now.
inflatable.
I'll second that.
Okay, any further discussion? Any members of the public who would like to be heard on this matter? All right, hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you very much. All right, moving on to 4B. I'm having a little agenda jumping problem. 4B, is it quarterly EDI update?
4B is consider resolution 2022-10, a resolution authorizing an exception to
Oh,
the
right.
levy limits for charges of the North Shore Fire Department pursuant to 2005 Wisconsin Act 484. And I believe that Chief Whitaker is present, and if you'd like to turn on your camera, there you go.
Yeah, good evening. Can
On
everyone hear me?
page 53 of our packet. Yes, and so this is something that we do every year as part of a consolidated fire department. And Chief Whitaker, I'll hand it over to you.
Everyone, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, so the state statute allows for a levy limit exception for joint fire departments. But it requires the charge back from the joint fire department to the municipalities to be no more than CPI plus 2%. Internally, the North Shore Fire Agreement limits it even more stringent to CPI plus 0.5%. And with that, it also then requires that all of the member municipalities of the joint department pass a resolution basically approving use of that levy limit exception. So even if only one of the communities wants to use the levy limit exception, the other 6 still need to pass this resolution. So since 2016, we've been passing these resolutions, and several of the municipalities have gone on to use the exception. It doesn't require that the village of Shorewood use the exception. It just gives the option to do it when that time comes and the clerk or the finance director fill out the levy limit worksheet. So with that, I take any questions.
Any questions for the chief? All right, seeing none, is there a motion? Trustee Stokbrand?
I move to approve resolution 2022-10, authorizing an exemption to the levy limits for charges for the North Shore Fire Department pursuant to 2005 Wisconsin Act 484.
Second. Oh. Motion by trustee Stokbrand, seconded by trustee Lynn. Any further discussion? Hearing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Kudo,
Aye.
trustee Lynn,
Aye.
President McKay,
Aye.
trustee Moore Baldoff,
Yes.
trustee Stokbrand,
Aye.
trustee Ursink.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you. Moving on to 4B, consider resolution 2022-10, a resolution authorizing an exception to the levy limits for changes for the North Shore Fire Department pursuant to 2005 Wisconsin Act 484. No, I jumped a line. Sorry. Consider resolution 2022-11, approving the 2023 North Shore Fire Department fees for service schedule. Correct?
Yes.
Yep.
So the fire service agreement between the 7 municipalities that make up the North Shore Fire Department requires that fees for service be adopted, not recommended by the fire department board. Shorewood has a seat on, and then adopted by at least 5 of the 7 municipalities before we can implement those fees. We try to time our fee schedule with our annual budget, since we do our budget projections based on fees, and we have a significant revenue source on EMS services and transport fees. So as you'll see in the schedule in your packet, the primary source of revenue on the fee side is the EMS services. The fire department board has taken I guess I'll call it a standard or a traditional approach to utilize the blended CPI rate of medical care commodities and medical care services to adjust those fees. For this year, for this year, moving into next year, it's a 4.4% increase. So the fees for EMS services have been increased by 4.4%. All these fees would take effect January 1 of 2023. The fire inspection permit fees and our administrative fees are remaining the same with no change. We feel those fees are sufficient to cover our cost for service and don't need to be changed. So I'll take any questions with that.
Any questions for the chief? Hearing none, is there a motion? Yes.
I move to approve resolution number 2022-11, a resolution approving the 2023 North Shore Fire Department fees for service schedule.
Second.
Motion by trustee Ursink, seconded by trustee Lynn. This will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Lynn,
Aye.
trustee Moore Baldoff,
Yes.
trustee Kudo,
Yes.
trustee Ursink,
Yes.
President McKay,
Yes.
trustee Stokbrand.
Aye.
Motion carries 6-0.
Thank you very much. Thank you, chief.
Yep, have a good night.
Okay, you too. All right, moving on to 4D. Update on, no, I'm sorry, quarterly EDI update and consideration, collaboration and alignment with the Village of Shorewood framework to achieve racial equity within Milwaukee County. There is a memo, several memos in your packet about last year. Since last year, we've made the effort to have at least a quarterly update on activity to advance equity, diversity, and inclusion. These updates have included different things. This one will focus on a summary of collaborative work between with the BI board. And that is a collaboration between the village board and the school board. And this evening, we're honored to have some of our school board colleagues here this evening. Abby Fowler, Emily Berry, Ellen Ekman, and President Shaw. Did I miss anyone? No. Okay. We thank you for being here this evening. So has everyone gotten a chance to review the first item, which is affirm terms, definitions, resources used by equity partners, including Human Relations Commission, Social Justice Repository webpage, the Shorewood School District Equity Strategic Plan, and Milwaukee County strategic vision for racial equity. So these would be the purpose of asking for affirmation at this time is that these are common definitions, that as we collaborate to acknowledge that this is the language that we use, it's not the only language that we use, but that these are common definitions that keep us in alignment with the other entities that we work with on the community level, but also on the county level as we reach outward. So that's my purpose for bringing this forward this evening. Is there any discussion? Trustee
I just-
Morvaldaw.
Yeah, I just have a question. Is there, so this is great, but is there an action item here? Do we need to say we collectively affirm this, or is it just an item for discussion?
It would be, I think the proposed motion is that I move to affirm.
Okay, so
Yeah,
it's just not piece by piece, it's at the very end. Okay.
it's, yeah, I think we take it, D1 to affirm this and then to affirm the next step and et cetera. Does that make sense?
Sure.
Okay. Is there anything that the school board members that are here would like to say? Mhm. Yep, you got to talk right into it so you can hear yourself.
Okay. Hear myself?
No, you got to
Can I hear myself?
talk, yeah,
Okay,
until you feel uncomfortable. Once you feel uncomfortable, that means you're speaking loud enough.
perfect. I guess, hi, I'm President Shaw from the school board. I want to just, I guess,
You
start
have
by
to give
saying.
your address, Paru.
Oh, 4259 North Larkin. I guess I wanted to start by thanking President McCaig. She has been to a number of our board meetings and has come both in support and has offered the support of the village board. And I think that there are lots of opportunities here for us to collaborate and to partner. I think that the school district has been on this journey for, at least 8 years. And I know that the village is starting this journey a little bit after us, but I think that there are plenty of places for us to collaborate. And the by-board meetings that we've had this year, specifically looking at ways in which we can bring individuals who have already identified themselves as people who want to be allies, who want to be advocates in our community, to bring them back together and think about like how we can help them use that voice that they've kind of started to find, I think is a great opportunity, and looking forward to kind of moving forward with this. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to be heard on this matter? Okay. Is there a motion to affirm?
Sure, I can make the motion. I move that the village board affirms the information contained within this memo for the purposes of increasing awareness and opportunities for leadership, i.e. non-legislative activities that advance racial equity, diversity, and inclusion in alignment with the Village of Shorewood framework to achieve racial equity within Milwaukee County.
I'll second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. Thank you. So we did, let's see, what's the next one? Did we break them up into all? Oh, agenda 4D2. Affirm, support. Oh, now I understand what you were asking. Was
Yeah,
it
I
one?
didn't know if there was like a motion for each one, or if by reference my
Mhm.
motion would stand for all of them, so.
I can't remember from reading the packet yesterday. How did we lay it out? Was it one general motion to affirm?
Yes.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Well, let's go back and see, were there any parts of the memo and action contained within the memo that anyone wanted to discuss?
I just had one quick thing. To
Yes.
say that I think that this is a good usage of the buy board. In the way that it's just collecting, it's making sure that everybody's on the same page. It's using people who are already engaged in this topic and already working in this within the village to just kind of work together in a public way and in very open and transparent way. And I just think it's just from a very limited engagement so far with the buy board, I think it's a step in the right direction, and I appreciate the work being done by the buy board.
Thank you. Any other discussion, comments, questions? Okay, so did the motion that trustee Moore Baldoff read cover everything? I think we're good. Okay, thank you very much. I'm sorry for my clumsiness. Now, did we include the Smart Kids Guide to Race and Inclusion event? Was that, because I did want to.
That was not included in the motion. And
Okay.
was an invitation, and I believe have an individual from the foundation here.
Yes, we do.
We do. I
Sadna
can't see behind.
involved.
Oh, perfect.
So yeah, can you tell the board about this? Do you mind coming up? This is really an incredible opportunity that Sadna has coordinated and led with other partners in the village and with the HRC, the Human Relations Commission Education Committee. And so I just wanted to make sure that everybody knew about it and so that we can support it, and also to say publicly thank you for your work on this.
My name is Sadna Lindball, Wildwood Avenue. I'm actually here on behalf of the Human Relations Subcommittee. I have been working with Charlie and a number of people, number of different initiatives to help raise awareness on a number of issues. Kind of fell in our lap as we learned that the author of An American Girl, focusing on actually from Milwaukee, we reached out to her to host a workshop. It's aimed at kids 14 to 8th grade, roughly, but all ages kids are welcome. Even though it is an American. But the program really focuses on a lot of the programming that she's done with United Way, with Rockwell Nation, with other organizations that really focus on adults and adults having open conversations. And it was one of the few programs we found, especially that focused on kids. It just on understanding perspective, how to be. So that program starts on October 11th. It's from 6:30 to 8. The Shorewood Foundation has supported purchase copies for all of the young that join. It's just going to be a really great event. I was told the capacity of the rooms around 70. We're over now, so it's starting to gain a little buzz. But again, it is open to all kids, not just at American. But we're really excited. It's kind of a unique program, really the demographic that hasn't had really open conversation. You are all welcome to join. Restrictions, please sign up so we can have a book. I'll entertain any questions.
Any questions or comments? All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So there's no action required. This was just a general update of something that's happening in alignment with equity, diversity, and inclusion in Shorewood. Great. So that concludes our equity, diversity, and inclusion update.
President McKay,
No.
did
Yes.
you want to update on the ICC Racial Equity Committee?
Yeah, well, that was included
Okay.
in the bigger memo. Are there any questions specifically about that committee and agenda setting? Okay, great. Thank you very much. So that concludes item 4. The next item is the consent agenda, but I'm wondering, since we have members of the public here, if we could move up Item 9B, consideration and resolution repudiating the history of discriminatory covenants in Milwaukee County. Does anybody, I make a motion to move that up. Is anybody else? Second? Okay. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we will now take item 9B as stated. So this is related also to equity, diversity, and inclusion, our work in that area. This is related to a movement, the redress movement, and also a project that is being run out of locally UWM called Mapping Systemic Racism. And it is a process of encouraging homeowners to look at the title deeds of their property, and if it includes discriminatory covenant language, to take those to the Milwaukee County and have them repudiated, which is to remove that language. We were invited to consider this resolution by Bay Bridge, our neighbors north, and Whitefish Bay. And so we are now the fourth entity to consider action on this. Whitefish Bay approved it unanimously, the Village of Greendale, and the county board. So at this time, are there any questions? Is there a motion to approve? Trustee Stokebrand.
I move to approve resolution 2022-12, repudiating the history of discriminatory covenants in Milwaukee County.
Second.
Oh, I'm gonna give it to Kudo. Nice try next time. Okay, motion by
I'm all hopped up
trustee
on sugar, that's what
Stokebrand,
it
seconded
is.
by trustee Kudo. Any discussion? Are there any members of the public who would like to be heard on this matter? Seeing none, this will be a roll call vote.
Trustee Lynn,
Aye.
President McCaig,
Aye.
Trustee Stokebrand,
Aye.
Trustee Moore Baldoff,
Yes.
Trustee Ursink,
Yes.
Trustee Kudo.
Yes.
Motion carried 6-0.
All right, thank you very much, and thank you everybody for coming out to be a part of this evening. All right, going back to item 5, consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Oh, you know what? I just realized that we have a guest on the line related to the last item that I did want to introduce. Caesar Dynasty, are you there?
I am here. Hi. I don't know if
so-
you can see me.
Yeah,
don't
I'm
have my
sorry that I
camera.
forgot to check this, the screen while we were on that item. Caesar, would you like to introduce yourself to the group and say what your role is in the Milwaukee area?
Yes, my name is Dynasty Caesar, and
Oh.
I am the senior organizer for the redress movement. And I am really thankful that we had the opportunity to be partners. Our organization is fairly new as it pertains to doing the work in Milwaukee. And so it's been a pleasure to support the work that has been done regarding repudiating the housing covenants. I'd love to, I can share my information in the chat so that anyone who's interested in connecting with us has the opportunity to do so. I apologize that I wasn't able to join you all today. I have a little human, so I had to tend to him this evening.
Thank you very much, and I apologize for getting your name wrong. I'm all flustered tonight. So Dynasty, thank you so much for joining us virtually, and I look forward to meeting you in person soon.
Yes, and thank you for having me.
All right. So thanks, everyone. All right, I think I've caught up with myself now. So we have a motion to approve the consent agenda. Did we take that?
Yeah, we have a motion in a second.
Okay. Any discussion?
I seconded. Oh. I
Who-
forget who gave it.
Oh, who made the motion to approve the consent? Okay, trustee
did.
Moore Baldoff.
Sorry.
All right, any discussion on the consent agenda? All right, hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion, consent agenda is approved as presented, 6-0. We have no items removed. Moving on to public hearings, there are none this evening. Item number 8, citizens to be heard. Are there any citizens who would like to be heard this evening?
You can say whatever you'd like. We'll listen.
This is your shot.
That's, you're the only citizen left.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
So people don't have to
Jennifer
talk, so-
Cooney Vulpes, 4331 North Alpine Avenue. And I walk every morning in Estabrook Park. And this morning I walked, and there was a lot of garbage left at the farmer's market. So I just want to get you aware.
No, I appreciate that, Jenny. Thank you so much. It's something that we, every week we try to manage as best as possible, communicating with our vendors and the county. I think county parks are just severely understaffed right now, and getting them to get out there and cleaning up all that trash. And like, not only that, but like when we get there in the morning, trash is everywhere. And it's been like a rampant issue this season. I think partly because we opened that back up for traffic for whatever reason. I haven't seen as much garbage as I have this year there.
That could be, but there are large plastic bags
Yeah.
left on the side
Mhm.
of Estabrook Parkway.
Yeah, I think
And they're all stacked.
the Milwaukee County asked us to have vendors, we asked for more garbage cans, and Milwaukee County said, just leave the bags out there and they will drive through and pick everything up. They have people that drive through in their pickups and pick them all up. But I appreciate that feedback, and it's something that we're continuously working with the county on, because they're the ones that handle all the garbage, but we can do a better job of communicating to our vendors to potentially take their own trash out of there.
So they won't let you hire your own trash pickup?
Well, we just don't have the resources to hire our own trash pickup. It's fairly
Yeah.
expensive, and Milwaukee
This
County
is-
Parks does a pretty,
Yeah, and this is not open for discussion. It's a citizens to be heard. So we've heard the citizen.
okay. Thank you. Thank you,
You
Jenny.
can make it a
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you guys want to talk more about it, please just shoot me an email or catch me somewhere and we can talk more. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Moving on to item 9, new business. 9A, we've taken care of. No, 9B, we've taken care of. 9A, consider application for special privilege approval for landscaping in the public right-of-way at 3800 North Murray Avenue. I believe we have a memo in our materials, followed by some supporting materials. Does anyone have any questions for Director Griepenjag? Or is there anything you'd like to add before we consider?
Sure. I just wanted to add that these are typically on the consent agenda, but since there's no recommendation within the packet or within the memo specific to approving or denying it, we put out new business to get the temperature of the village board on this. And so the request before you tonight is to plant arborvitae on the outside of a fence within the public right of way at a corner property. Village fence regulations only allow a 4-foot fence in that location. Obviously, arborvitae exceed 4 feet. That condition does exist several places within the village, not approved unfortunately, but with mature landscaping. And so typically we would not allow, or typically we would not be recommending to exceed an existing village regulation of that 4-foot privacy screen. But the applicant has requested to place those arborvitae there, understanding that it exists elsewhere in the village, and our really only concern would be utilities underneath the area, which DPW has confirmed do not exist, and making sure that the arborvitae do not grow into the sidewalk, impeding pedestrian traffic. We don't really have an issue with it, but because it does override other village ordinances, we just wanted to get your specific feedback on this. And if granted tonight, we would proceed in the future with putting these on the consent agenda. But there was room on the agenda to have just a brief introduction and discussion of this before we, put it within consent.
All right, discussion. Trustee Kudo.
I guess the question would be, why not on the other side of this fence? Want more space.
Correct. And typically, so this one is coming to us as an enforcement. And so I believe 9 of the arborvitae already planted on the north side of the, the west side of the lot. The code enforcement inspector saw them as they were going in. And so they have not planted the remainder of them. And so it's once again a unique circumstance because some of them are already in. We can make them via enforcement, relocate them to the inside, which is what we would have recommended had they not been installed already. But since they were installed and the applicant had the right to request it, this was what they would like to do prior, or instead of going for an enforcement measure, they sought the permission from the board to have it approved as they would like. If this special privilege is not granted, we would proceed with an enforcement measure to have them planted behind the fencing, which is what our standard recommendation would be if we were asked prior to installation.
Go ahead.
Sorry, this is
Mhm.
do we know how large these bushes are gonna get? I mean, they already look
Yeah.
right.
Mhm.
15 feet with fairly decent diameter at the base.
Yeah.
Up on the side.
Right.
Mhm.
I believe the intent is to have them grow together to be a solid screen, correct? And so they're young right now. Depending on the health of the plant and the soil and things, I would expect this to largely fill in over time.
Trustee Stokbrand.
I guess as someone who walks a lot, I don't know enough about horticulture, but they'll be in the sidewalk pretty quickly. And now maybe there are new varieties that only go up mostly vertically. And, I don't know. You don't go into that level of detail with you.
I mean, every plant is somewhat unique, but yeah, there is 4 feet between the sidewalk and that fence. And so there's a 4-foot gap to fill in. I don't know the specifics of whether it's going to be 5 foot or 7 feet, but to your point, if it ever impedes on the sidewalk, that would be enforcement to trim that, which then starts looking poor and harming the plants. The most common enforcement of this, quite honestly, is on Lake Drive where people have it and they have less of a right of way issue. There's only 2 feet behind the sidewalk. So we do have enforcement of these when they encroach in the sidewalk. I don't know specifically if they're not intended to grow into the sidewalk, obviously, but if they do, we would enforce it. Once again, it would be our preference that they be behind the fence, but since they were already installed and the applicant would like to keep them, that's why we're here.
I would just say I think I'm generally okay with it as it is, as long as the homeowner is aware that they're going to have to trim them if it encroaches on the sidewalk, with the knowledge that that might kill the trees in 4 or 5 years. It may be worth just looking into voluntarily moving them to the other side of the fence. You have to avoid that in the future, but
I mean, it seems to me, not being a horticulturalist, but if these have these been recently planted?
Correct.
So it
In
seems
the
like it
last
would be
2 months. perhaps.
easier to move and address the situation now rather than if it becomes an issue in the future, is where my head is at. I feel for, people who made this effort to, beautify their space, but the concern about it getting into the sidewalk and then that ongoing maintenance and need to have code enforcement out seems like we could just avoid all of those issues by enforcing what we've got now and having them move those.
And that space on that side of the sidewalk is the right of way.
Correct. Up until that fence. That fence is, I believe, on
The fence is their property line
Correct.
basically and everything. Yeah.
yes.
Okay.
Yes.
I'll make a motion. I move to deny the application for special privilege approval for landscaping in the public right of way at 3800. Yeah.
Second.
Motion by trustee Kudo, seconded by trustee Ursink. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
I
Any opposed? Motion carries, which is to deny. Thank you.
Feel horrible.
I feel
I've-
bad, but I just think.
I really
it's-
wish they
Yeah.
would have put it on their property.
I
It
think it's
makes
probably
sense,
better
though.
long-term
Yeah.
though. I think
Mhm.
it's a long-term.
Sounds like you do have some discussion, but the case
Sorry.
is closed.
Sorry,
so-
sorry.
Yeah.
It's guilt.
It's-
It's not
it's-
discussion.
Yes.
I hear you. It's my first denial as well, so. Item 10, reports of village officials, village president. Update on the ICC meeting, September 12th. The major issue with the ICC at this time is there is a change in legislation at the state level, encouraging all counties to have one PSAP, which is public service answering point, PSAP. Basically one dispatch, 911. For which funds from the state that can be used for technology upgrades, capital expenses, consolidation, and so forth, can be granted through that one PSAP. Milwaukee County is very different because we are so large. We have such a large city. So we have currently, I think, 15 different dispatches, but the North Shore is consolidated already. In every other county, the piece of legislation assigns jurisdiction of the piece of designating the PSAP to the county board in every county in the state, all 71, except for Milwaukee County, because we are different. So it designated, it assigned jurisdiction for designating the PSAP to the ICC, which does not have a great history of decision-making and agreement. So the Milwaukee County is stepping forward, wanting to be the PSAP. The city of Milwaukee is stepping forward, wanting to be the PSAP. And the North Shore is basically the village of Bayside is stepping forward to be the PSAP. So we had a very long, unproductive discussion to defer this item to the month of October. It doesn't involve us as a village board. It is completely at the ICC level. So that is that update in case you hear something about it or it's in the news or something like that. Trustee Stokebrand.
So this would be losing local control. So is this something where we could discuss and pass a resolution indicating our preference? I don't want our dispatch coming through Milwaukee County or the city.
It's not, it won't. So all this is, it's basically it's a fiscal agent designation rather than a point of service designation. So for example, all we have to do.
It's a money pass through.
It's a money pass through at this time for state funds that are a state fund that is provides reimbursement to expenditures related to emergency dispatch that meet certain eligibility criteria. So it's mostly capital costs and costs that would go towards consolidation. That does not mean that, for example, whoever is the fiscal agent is not going to become the head of dispatch for entire Milwaukee County. So that the other PSAPs in Milwaukee County would basically just apply for funding to reimburse their costs that are eligible under the state fund.
So the state legislature has mandated the testing.
Mhm.
And so we don't have any role in that.
Mhm.
Okay,
Is it-
thank you.
Is it legislation that's been passed?
Mhm. Yeah, this has been kicking around for a year, but people just decided to start talking about it last month, so. So anyway, I just wanted to give you that update in case you see something in the news about this. Any other questions?
Does the League of Municipalities or the Counties Association have a, you know, if they had a position on this?
They do. The Wisconsin Counties Association favors county designation. The League of Wisconsin Municipalities does not have a position in that they, when the bill was being deliberated, they advocated for keeping, not forcing county level PSAP.
Local.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. And the Fire Chiefs Association and the Police Chiefs Association want to defer the matter and do a study. So there's a lot of deferring. Okay. So, Mental Health Emergency Center, Milwaukee County, a slide presentation deck is included in the materials. Mike Lappin gave an overview of the newly operational mental health emergency center that was 10 years in the making. This is a huge deal. Probably Trustee Moore-Baldoff probably has a lot to say about it. It's really a national model. And so considering how much Milwaukee County struggles with resources, it's just really amazing that this all came together. So it's good times ahead. Is there anything you want to say?
I would just say that this is absolutely incredible that we're here. And it took a lot of partnership within government, from community partners. It took a lot of buy-in to get people on board with changing the way Milwaukee County did business in terms of the administration of mental health care. But this is absolutely just a fantastic thing for our communities, and I'm really glad it happened.
Yeah, people will get better care, more appropriate care, more accessible care for much fewer tax dollars than were being used at the outdated, terrible facility. So, all right. Oh, and then proclamation celebrating National Hispanic American Heritage Month. I also meant to do that earlier, but I forgot. So anyway, I asked Trustee Kudo if he would be willing to read that for us this evening. And if he wants to say anything, Trustee Kudo, if you want to say anything about your Hispanic American heritage,
No.
you're welcome to.
Proud to be Cuban. So I will go ahead and read it. Celebrating National Hispanic American Heritage Month proclamation from Village President Haig. Whereas National Hispanic American Heritage Month celebrates the history, culture, and contributions of American citizens with ancestry from Spain, Mexico, the Caribbean, and Central and South America. And whereas Hispanic American Heritage Month began as Hispanic Heritage Week in 1968 with September 15th being selected as the starting point to honor the anniversary of independence of Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Nicaragua, Mexico, Chile, and Belize. Also celebrates their independence on days on September 16th, 18th, and 21, respectively. And whereas the Village of Shorewood is committed to honoring our brothers and sisters in the Hispanic American community and reaffirms Shorewood's vision to achieve racial equity, and whereas whether their ancestors have been here for generations or if they are among our newest residents, we recognize that Hispanic heritage is American heritage, and our brothers and sisters in the Hispanic American community represent a rich history of culture, country, and culture. Now, therefore, I, Ian McCaig, Shorewood Village President, do hereby proclaim September 15th, 2021 through October 15th, 2021. Change that to 2022.
Yeah, we'll update those.
To be Hispanic American Heritage Month throughout Shorewood and recognize the important contributions of Hispanic American individuals and dated at Shorewood on this 19th day of September 2022.
Thank you very much. And I believe this is our first proclamation as such. So, all right, thank you very much, Trustee Kudo. And that is all I have this evening. Any reports of village trustees? Trustee Stokebrand?
I had another commitment that ran late, so I didn't get to attend the DPW session on Saturday. I think it was about different ecological efforts they're doing along the Milwaukee River, but I heard it was excellent. So I'd like to thank, I think it was Kay Dunleavy and Ben Abanik.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Trustee Moore Baldoff.
I just wanted to recognize that tomorrow, September 20th, is National Voter Registration Day. So hope we see some of our newest voters. I know the high school usually gets people, informed. So any of those students who are turning 18 can register, and I hope to see others throughout the village get their registration up to date if they need to. And also just wanted to thank Chief Worth and the police department for their response and their really fantastic communication over the weekend when there was an incident at Metro Market and in Shorewood. And also hope, I know one of our, there was one of our squads was in an vehicle incident. So hopefully everyone involved is doing okay.
Thank you. Trustee Ursink.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you for everybody that came out and helped and supported the feast this year. That was, I think, 2 weeks ago, week ago. Seems like yesterday,
yeah.
but it was a fantastic event. And again, we had a really, really great weather, really good turnout. Unfortunately, I was so committed to the dinner, I didn't get a chance to see the other half of the feast, but I heard so many good things from our residents. One resident was not happy about the music, but we'll look at that in the future and figure out ways to work through that. I want to thank everybody for helping out in the dinner, for coming to the dinner and eating at the dinner, and helping out a little bit after the dinner too. It was fantastic. But with that event, we after the dinner is done, we cleaned everything up, and we all as a group walked up and down Oakland, picking up trash and doing the best we can. And so. It was a real team effort. Really appreciate Janet from the bid. Want to acknowledge her and say she was fantastic. Steph Salvia was there. We saw Rebecca, we saw Erica, so I have a great picture of all the bid directors that have been, that I've worked with, which is kind of weird that, I've had so many. So hopefully it's not me, but just, I know it started, the event started with Erica, then I went to Steph, and then now it's with Janet. And maybe that's what's killing all these bid directors, but no, everybody, Janet was fantastic to work with. Our crew is fantastic to work with. And it was another really great event in Shorewood and a great showcase for our community. So that was a lot of fun, and looking forward to starting to plan the fourth annual Shorewood Feast. Also wanted to acknowledge all of our Shorewood employees. We got to attend a luncheon last week. And it was great to sit down in Hupper Park with a group of employees. Want to acknowledge Scott Erickson from DPW and Mark Myers, who have been with the village for 30 years. I mean, that's pretty incredible. It's quite a commitment to our community. And David Coons for being here for 25 years. Most of these are with the police department and DPW. So really fantastic to be there and to celebrate with those folks.
I'll just say it was a pleasure serving Trustee Moore Baldoff and Trustee Kudo in their dates at the feast. Yeah. All right. Anyone else? Excellent. Village managers report. No report at this time. Future items for consideration. Seeing none. Item 12. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Motion to adjourn by Trustee Stokebrand, seconded by Trustee Ursink. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? We are adjourned at 8:23.
33.
8:33. Thank you.
Earliest meeting ever adjournment?